After a choppy section with values near 60, a clear trend emerges, in this case a downtrend, and that's accompanied by a steady decline of the choppiness index, which naturally drops below 38 during the strong directional movement a gap down brings. Quite promptly, the choppiness index rebounds, as price is indeed quite choppy after the gap down. Here, the choppiness index spikes up towards 60, even though there's clear directional movement, in this case downward directional movement. But eventually, the indicator drops to those lower values to reflect this directional movement. It's a good example to show how the indicator can lag behind when there are quick shifts between strong trending movement and sudden consolidation, such as after the gap down. In cases like this with extended choppy range-bound movement, the indicator doesn't necessarily have to be close to values around 60. Relatively flat movement of the choppiness index can also be a clear indication of a non-trending phase. This sudden drop would seem like a strong indication of more directional movement, in this case again to the downside, but due to the quick rebound after the brief dip below 38, it's more of an indication of a clear yet short trend on a chart that is still predominantly range-bound and choppy in the broader context. Again, this current upswing is quite a clear and concise trend in the short term so far, but it's still mostly considered insignificant in the broader context by the choppiness index, which has risen right when the upswing began to develop, which makes sense since in the relatively range-bound movement, price has remained relatively unchanged. Naturally, some resistance approaching the $15 price area that roughly defines the upper boundary of the range we've been seeing recently. Quickly, price surges higher for a definitive bullish reversal, developing further, which is reflected by the choppiness index continuing to drop. When this indicator rebounds, choppiness is said to be increasing, and that is indeed what is happening with price, as it displays this consolidation type of movement, which is a clear distinction from the steep trending movement we saw earlier, when choppiness index values were much lower, and generally on a decline, similar to what has just happened in the past few days. As you may already know, these last three candles are a distinct bearish reversal pattern, and in a way such a rapid shift is poorly reflected with the choppiness index, which is not very useful during the formation of those few large candles switching directions. When the indicator does go consistently flat at relatively low values nowhere near 60, it's a good indication of the chart moving into another horizontal consolidation phase until another bullish trend rapidly develops. Of course, it's strong directional movement initially with the trend and the choppiness index showing steep movements, but the trend can't go on forever, and eventually consolidation occurs with choppy movement reflected by the index rising and flattening.